Let me ask you something that might genuinely disturb you. There is a doctor. She went to school for 12 years. She carries over $200,000 in student loan debt. She works 60-hour weeks. She saves lives for a living. And at the end of every month, after taxes, after her malpractice insurance, after the bills, she is barely keeping her head above water. Now there is a janitor. No degree. No prestigious title. And somehow, by his late 40s, he owns 3 rental properties and a small portfolio of index funds that quietly grow while he sleeps. How does that happen? How does a society that tells us education equals wealth produce so many highly educated, deeply broke people? The answer is not about intelligence. It is not about effort. It is not even about opportunity. It is about which quadrant you are living your life in. And today, we are going to map it all out. This is the Cashflow Quadrant, a framework introduced by Robert Kiyosaki in the sequel to his legendary book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And while Rich Dad Poor Dad told you that the game exists, the Cashflow Quadrant hands you the map. But I want to warn you before we go any further. Understanding this framework is not the hard part. The hard part is what happens next. Because moving from the left side of this quadrant to the right side is not a career decision. It is an identity transformation. And most people never make it. Not because they lack the skill, but because they cannot let go of who they currently believe they are. Stay with me. Because there is a moment in this journey, a specific psychological crossing point that almost no one talks about. And once you understand it, you will never see your financial life the same way again. Let us start where almost everyone starts. The E quadrant. E stands for employee. Now, when most people hear the word employee, they think of someone in a low-level position. Someone who did not make it. But here is what Kiyosaki reveals that fundamentally shifts your perception. The E quadrant is not defined by your salary. It is defined by your psychology. An employee, whether they earn $30,000 a year or $300,000 a year, shares one core belief: security. Now let us talk about the S quadrant, because this is where it gets interesting and slightly heartbreaking. S stands for self-employed. And on the surface, this looks like freedom. You are your own boss. You set your own hours. You built something for yourself. And society celebrates this. We glorify the hustle, the grind, the lone entrepreneur who bet on themselves. But Kiyosaki makes a point that cuts right through that narrative. Most self-employed people do not own a business. They own a job. And it is often the most demanding, most relentless, most psychologically exhausting job in the world. Because when you are self-employed, you are not just the worker. You are the accountant, the marketer, the sales team, the customer service department, and the janitor. You are everything. Now we cross the line, and everything changes. The B quadrant. B stands for business owner. And Kiyosaki is very specific about what this means, because it is not what most people think. A business owner is not just someone who started a company, rented an office, and hired 2 employees. The definition goes much deeper than a title or a tax registration. The defining question Kiyosaki asks is this: could you leave your business for a year and come back to find it more profitable than when you left? Sit with that question for a moment. Because if the answer is no, you are still in the S quadrant with a business card. A true B quadrant business owner has built a system. Not a product, not a service, not a talent. A system. A machine that operates with or without their daily presence. And the fuel that powers that machine is other people's time, other people's skills, and other people's energy, all organized through a structure that the business owner designed and refined over time. This is where the concept of leverage enters the picture. Leverage is the fundamental economic idea that separates the left side from the right side of this entire quadrant. On the left side, your output is permanently limited to what you personally produce in the hours you personally work. On the right side, your output is multiplied by every system, every person, and every automated process that works on your behalf around the clock. Think about it in real 2026 terms. A freelance graphic designer who trades their own creative hours for client payments is living in the S quadrant. A design agency that builds a team, develops repeatable workflows, and lands retainer contracts that generate monthly recurring revenue is operating in the B quadrant. The difference is not talent. It is not even hard work. It is architecture. It is the intentional decision to build something bigger than yourself. And here is what makes this moment in history so extraordinary. In 2026, the tools available to build B quadrant systems have never been more accessible to ordinary people. AI-driven customer service handles thousands of inquiries without a single human hour. Automated marketing funnels nurture leads while you sleep. Digital products sell at 3 in the morning to customers on the other side of the world. Online education platforms generate revenue for creators who recorded their knowledge once and now earn from it indefinitely. The era of digital leverage has quietly dismantled the old excuse that the right side of the quadrant was only for people who already had money or connections. The access exists today in ways that were unimaginable even a decade ago. The question is no longer whether you can build a system. The question is whether you are willing to think like an architect instead of a laborer. And then there is the I quadrant, the quietest quadrant, the most misunderstood, and arguably the most powerful place on the entire map. I stands for investor. Investors do not trade time, they do not trade talent, they do not even necessarily trade effort in the traditional sense. They deploy capital, and that capital works for them. Money makes money. And the compounding nature of that process is, mathematically speaking, the closest thing to a superpower that exists in the real world. Albert Einstein reportedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And while the quote may be apocryphal, the mathematics behind it is not. When your money earns returns, and those returns earn returns, and that cycle continues uninterrupted over years and decades, the numbers begin to move in ways that feel almost surreal to someone raised on a linear income model. But here is what most people miss about the I quadrant, and this is critical. You do not need to start here. In fact, trying to start here without the foundation beneath it is one of the most common and most painful financial mistakes people make. The I quadrant is most naturally and most sustainably reached as the destination of the B quadrant journey. The path looks like this. You build systems that generate consistent cash flow. And then, instead of inflating your lifestyle to consume that cash flow, you deploy it into investments that generate even more cash flow. Real estate that produces rental income. Index funds that grow through market returns. Stakes in other businesses. Assets that appreciate while you focus on building the next layer. And the cycle, once genuinely started, becomes almost impossible to stop. Not because of luck. Not because of privilege, though privilege can accelerate it. But because of the fundamental mathematical nature of compounding, combined with the structural advantage of systems that work without your direct presence. This is why the wealthy continue to accumulate wealth even when they stop working. They are not smarter than you. They are not more deserving. They have simply positioned themselves inside a loop that the left side of the quadrant, by its very design, cannot access. The right side is not a moral judgment. It is a structural reality. An understanding that structure is the beginning of everything. Here is the truth that sits beneath everything we have covered today. Moving from the left side to the right side is not primarily a skills challenge. You can learn the skills. They are learnable. It is not primarily a knowledge challenge either. The knowledge exists, and you are clearly already seeking it. It is an identity crisis. A profound, uncomfortable, deeply personal unraveling of who you believe yourself to be and who you have been told you are supposed to become. The employee has been taught that security is wisdom. The self-employed person has been taught that independence is success